Sometimes the most powerful acts of kindness are the ones nobody sees coming, and the ones nobody talks about afterward. This is a true story from California in the late 1990s. It's about a fire, a family, and a group of people who showed up when no one else would. No cameras, no recognition, no strings attached, just help when it was needed most. It was an ordinary Tuesday evening in a working-class neighborhood in California. The kind of place where people knew their neighbors' names, where kids played in the street until the streetlights came on. The Martinez family, we'll call them that, lived in a small, modest house. Nothing fancy. The father worked construction. The mother cleaned houses and took care of their two kids, ages 7 and 9. That night, an electrical fault in the kitchen sparked a fire. Started small, but in an old house with aging wiring, small doesn't stay small for long. By the time the fire trucks arrived, half the house was engulfed. The family made it out, but the father had burns on his arms from getting the kids through the smoke. They stood on the lawn in their pajamas, watching everything they owned turn to ash. The local news didn't cover it. It wasn't big enough, dramatic enough. Just another house fire in a city that saw dozens every month. The insurance was minimal. The house was old, and the policy only covered a fraction of what they'd need to rebuild. Within 48 hours, the reality set in. They had nowhere to go, no savings to fall back on. The kids were sleeping on couches at relatives' houses. The mother was overwhelmed, barely holding it together. The father couldn't work with his hands bandaged, and nobody was coming to help. Now, across the street lived a man named Rick. He'd been in the neighborhood for years. Quiet guy. Worked as a mechanic. Rode a motorcycle. Rick happened to be a member of the local Hells Angels charter. If you don't know much about the Hells Angels, you probably know the stereotype. Leather jackets. Motorcycles. The image the media loves to show. But like most stereotypes, it misses the full picture. Yes, they're a motorcycle club with a tough reputation. But many charters also operate by a code that outsiders rarely see. Loyalty, brotherhood, and taking care of their community. Rick had watched the fire from his window. He'd seen the family standing there with nothing. And in the days after, he saw them struggling, bouncing between relatives, trying to figure out how to rebuild their lives. It bothered him. So one evening, Rick stopped by the clubhouse. He wasn't there to ask for anything. He just mentioned it in passing during a conversation. Vented his frustration that in a neighborhood where people were supposed to look out for each other, this family was falling through the cracks. Quote, "Nobody's helping them," he said. "Not the city, not a charity, nobody." The room went quiet for a moment. Then one of the older members spoke up. "Give us the address." 2 days later, on a Saturday morning, the Martinez family was at the house trying to salvage what they could from the damage. The smell of smoke still hung in the air. Blackened walls, collapsed ceiling sections. Felt hopeless. Then they heard the motorcycles, 6 of them rolling down the street in formation, the deep rumble of engines echoing off the houses. Mrs. Martinez's first reaction was fear. She didn't know what was happening. She stepped in front of her kids instinctively. But then the riders pulled up, cut their engines, and climbed off their bikes. No aggression, no intimidation, just calm, deliberate purpose. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair, walked up to the father and extended his hand. "Heard you could use some help." Before the father could respond, they started unloading. Bags of groceries, clothing for the kids, still in packaging with tags attached. An envelope sealed with cash inside. Lumber, drywall sheets, roofing materials, power tools. The mother stood there, stunned, trying to process what was happening. "We don't understand," she stammered. "We don't even know you." The man with the graying hair smiled gently. "Rick's one of ours. That makes you one of ours too. And then, without another word, they got to work. They spent the entire weekend there. Not just dropping off supplies and leaving. They stayed. They rebuilt. Some of them were contractors, electricians, roofers in their day jobs. They knew what they were doing. Others were just there to help however they could. Hauling debris, painting, cleaning. The father, still bandaged, tried to help but was gently waved off. Quote, "You rest. Let us handle this." The kids watched, wide-eyed, as these intimidating-looking strangers transformed their home. One of the bikers noticed the younger kid staring and walked over with a smile. "You like motorcycles?" The kid nodded shyly. "Maybe when you're older I'll teach you to ride." "Sound good." By Sunday evening, the house wasn't perfect, but it was livable. The roof was patched. The electrical wiring was safe. The walls were repaired and painted. The kitchen was functional again. Mrs. Martinez kept trying to thank them, tears streaming down her face. She wanted to know their names, wanted to do something in return, wanted to tell people what they'd done. But every time she tried, she was gently stopped. "Don't talk about this," one of them said quietly. "Just pay it forward if you can. Help someone else when you're able." As the sun set, they packed up their tools, climbed back on their motorcycles, and rode off. No photos, no fanfare. No patches displayed prominently for recognition. They never came back. They never asked for anything in return. The family never even learned most of their names. Years later, Mrs. Martinez would tell this story to her kids, now grown. She'd tell them that the people who helped them that weekend taught her something profound about kindness. Real generosity doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't keep score. The Hells Angels who showed up that day weren't looking for good press or community service hours. They weren't trying to change anyone's mind about who they were. They just saw people in need and decided to help. Simple as that. And maybe that's the point. We live in a world where so much of what we do is performative. We post about our charity on social media. We make sure people know when we've done something good. We want credit, validation, proof that we're good people. But these men operated by a different code. Help because it's right. Take care of your community. Don't make it about you. The envelope they left had $3,000 in it. Cash. Untraceable. No receipt needed. The clothes fit the kids perfectly because someone had taken the time to ask what sizes they wore. The groceries included the specific brand of cereal the kids liked because someone had paid attention. These weren't grand, impersonal gestures. They were deeply human acts of care. The Martinez family rebuilt their lives. The father healed. The mother found steadier work. The kids grew up. And true to the request made that weekend, they paid it forward. Quietly, without fanfare, because that's what they learned from a group of bikers who showed up when no one else would. Kindness doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need applause. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is help someone. Ask for nothing in return, and walk away. Maybe we could all learn something from that. If you enjoyed this story, consider how you might pay it forward in your own community. Not for recognition, just because it's the right thing to do. For more inspiring stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.